You think being born into royalty means living a life of endless wealth and luxury? Think again. Today, we're diving into the shocking stories of 12 British royals who face serious money problems. 1. Edward VIII, Duke of Windsor. Let's kick things off with one of the most controversial royals in British history. Edward VIII shocked the world when he gave up being King of England in 1936 to marry American divorcee Wallis Simpson. But what most people don't know is that his abdication plunged him into decades of financial insecurity and constant money worries. When Edward signed the abdication papers on December 10, 1936, he jumped straight into financial uncertainty. He struck a deal with his younger brother, the new King George VI, for an annual allowance of $25,000 for the rest of his life. Sounds good, right? Wrong. George VI later backed out of this agreement and offered much less money instead. The condition: Edward could never set foot on British soil unless personally invited by the government. Here's where it gets interesting. Edward had been crying poor even before he abdicated, claiming he only had £90,000 in assets. But the truth came out quickly. Royal biographer Sarah Bradford revealed that Edward had secretly saved over $1 million from his income as Prince of Wales from the Duchy of Cornwall. This was money that should have gone back to the royal coffers, but Edward had stashed it away. His brother King George VI was absolutely furious when he discovered this deception. The Duke and Duchess of Windsor spent the rest of their lives in exile, mainly in Paris. The French government offered them a villa in the Bois de Boulogne for a tiny rent, and they bought a weekend retreat called Le Moulin de Tuileries. Despite having secret millions, Edward constantly complained about money and lived a life obsessed with status and financial exploitation. According to historian Andrew Lowney's book, Traitor King, the couple spent their post-war years in a vapid existence with no real purpose except entertaining and being entertained. They were heavily subsidized by wealthy friends and manipulated the media to portray themselves as victims. When Edward died in 1972, Queen Elizabeth II agreed to give Wallis Simpson a voluntary allowance of $5,000 per year. The irony? Despite all his complaints about being poor, Edward had accumulated around $10 million by the time he was regularly visiting the United States. 2. George IV. If there's one royal who truly knew how to spend money he didn't have, it was King George IV. This man took royal extravagance to absolutely insane levels, and his debts became a national scandal that followed him from youth until death. By 1795, George's debts had reached the extraordinary sum of $630,000, which would be equivalent to about $82 million today. Just let that sink in. To put this in perspective, that's more money than most people could spend in several lifetimes. His father, King George III, absolutely refused to help him, forcing young George to quit his fancy Carlton House residence and live at his secret wife's place. Here's the wild part. George had secretly married a Catholic widow named Maria Fitzherbert in 1785, which was completely illegal without the king's consent. But when his debts spiraled out of control in 1787, he needed Parliament to bail him out. To get the money, his political ally, Charles James Fox, publicly denied the marriage even existed. Poor Maria Fitzherbert was furious at this betrayal, but George got his money. Parliament granted him $161,000 to pay his debts and an additional $60,000 for improvements to Carlton House. Did George learn his lesson? Absolutely not. His spending just got worse. By 1794, his debts had exploded to over $500,000. His father finally put his foot down and said George had to marry his cousin, Princess Caroline of Brunswick, if he wanted any more financial help. George agreed, even though he hated Caroline from the moment he met her. They had one daughter, Princess Charlotte, and separated within a year. George continued living in lavish luxury, maintaining multiple mistresses, building extravagant palaces like the Brighton Pavilion, and throwing expensive parties while his subjects lived in poverty. When he finally became king in 1820, he held one of the most expensive coronations in British history, costing £243,000. That's nearly £22 million in today's money. When George IV died in 1830, the Times newspaper showed no sympathy. What eye has wept for him? What heart has heaved one throb of unmercenary sorrow? The man had lived and died in debt, despite being King of England. 3. Prince Andrew. Now let's jump to modern times with Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, whose financial troubles have made headlines in the 21st century. This is a story that combines scandal, debt, and the question of who's really paying the bills. In 2022, Prince Andrew settled a civil lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre for an undisclosed amount. While the exact figure remained confidential, reports suggested it was around £12 million, though some sources later claimed it was as low as $3 million. Either way, it raised a massive question: how could Prince Andrew afford this? When Andrew stepped back from royal duties in 2019 after his disastrous BBC Newsnight interview, he stopped receiving public funding. He had a Royal Navy pension of about $20,000 per year, which clearly wasn't going to cover a multi-million-pound settlement. The answer: he needed help. Prince Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, had purchased a Swiss ski chalet in Verbier in 2014 for $24.5 million. They agreed to pay roughly $6.8 million in installments by December 2019, but when the deadline came, the money wasn't there. The former owner sued them in Swiss courts. Andrew eventually settled this debt in November 2020 for about half the amount owed, and reports suggested he was selling the chalet to help fund his legal settlement. But here's the real story. Multiple reports confirm that Queen Elizabeth II helped Andrew pay the settlement from her private funds. According to the Daily Mirror, the Queen contributed $2 million to Giuffre's charity to avoid being connected to a personal payment to Giuffre. The Telegraph reported that the Queen had poured millions into her son's civil suit defense and settlement. Andrew's murky finances have long been questioned. The Times reported that a company controlled by Andrew and used to manage his investments was more than $260,000 in debt. He'd also taken out a loan of nearly $2 million in 2017 from Bank Haviland, which was allegedly paid off within days by companies associated with financier David Rowland. In 2025, reports emerged that King Charles III and Prince Andrew had reached a financial settlement over the Royal Lodge, which Andrew had been resisting vacating despite pressure from his brother. 4. Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. Speaking of Prince Andrew, we can't forget his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, who earned the unfortunate nickname Duchess of Debt due to her spectacular financial disasters. After divorcing Prince Andrew in 1996, Sarah Ferguson received a settlement of only $3 million, a fraction of what Princess Diana received. Over $2 million of that went into a trust for her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, leaving Sarah with less than $1 million for herself. By the mid-1990s, British tabloids reported she owed more than $4 million to Coutts and Cobley. Her bank. Ferguson moved to New York and tried to rebuild her finances through children's books and a lucrative deal as spokesperson for Weight Watchers International. She seemed to be getting back on track. But then came Hartmore, LLC. In 2006, Ferguson founded Hartmore, a lifestyle company in the United States meant to help with her career in publishing, media, and public speaking. She invested everything she had, all the money from producing the film The Young Victoria and her Little Red children's book series. In an interview with Hello magazine in 2009, Ferguson admitted the company left her teetering on the edge of bankruptcy with debts of $630,000. "I put all my money into Hartmore and I lost it all," she confessed to Hello magazine. "I could write a really interesting book about finance for women, and the first bit of advice I would give is never sign away your intellectual property. You won't have any control over your own life. That's what happened to me." By 2010, reports suggested Ferguson might declare voluntary bankruptcy with debts of $5 million, though other sources said it was around $2 million. She would have been the first member of the royal family to be declared legally bankrupt. The Sunday Telegraph reported that a senior financial advisor to Buckingham Palace recommended she file for voluntary bankruptcy, and Prime Minister David Cameron had been briefed on the situation. Here's where it gets even more controversial. In 2011, it was revealed that Jeffrey Epstein had helped Ferguson avoid bankruptcy by paying $15,000 to an employee she owed money to. Ferguson later expressed deep regret about this, saying, "I personally, on behalf of myself, deeply regret that Jeffrey Epstein became involved in any way with me." Adding to her financial woes, Sarah and Andrew bought a Swiss ski chalet and failed to pay the installments, leaving around $8 million unpaid. The owners sued and eventually agreed to accept about half the amount owed when Ferguson claimed they didn't have the money. Despite all this, in 2024, Sarah Ferguson somehow purchased a $5 million house in Mayfair, London, which left many people scratching their heads about where the money came from. 5. Princess Diana. Princess Diana is remembered for her charity work, her style, and her tragic death. But during her divorce from Prince Charles, she fought hard for a financial settlement that would secure her future. This wasn't about greed, it was about survival after leaving the royal family. Diana and Charles separated in December 1992, but it took 4 long years to finalize their divorce. Queen Elizabeth II finally pushed for the divorce in December 1995 after Diana's explosive BBC Panorama interview, where she discussed Charles's infidelity and said there were 3 of us in the marriage. When negotiations began, Diana initially sought around $35 million, according to some tabloid reports, double what Buckingham Palace was planning to offer. Her advisors argued this amount was necessary to meet her needs for the rest of her life, especially considering she had become accustomed to a royal standard of living. The final settlement, announced in July 1996, gave Diana a lump sum of $17 million, about $22.5 million at the time, plus $400,000 per year to run her private office. She was allowed to keep her apartments at Kensington Palace and could use the state apartments at St. James's Palace for entertaining. She also maintained access to the royal family's private jets. Here's the shocking part. This settlement took all the cash Charles had, according to Chris Anderson, author of The Day Diana Died. Charles had vast real estate holdings, but was cash poor. He essentially had to empty his pockets to pay Diana the $22.5 million. Royal biographer Tina Brown revealed in her 2007 book, The Diana Chronicles, that the prince was first stunned, then outraged by Diana's $17 million demand, and hated being obliged to borrow from his mother to meet Diana's terms. The Telegraph reported in 2004 that the Queen lent her son several £1,000,000 for the divorce settlement and that he was still repaying her years later. What did Diana lose? She had to give up her Royal Highness title, which stung badly. Prince William promised his mother he would restore her status once he became king, telling her, "I don't care what you're called, you're still mummy." She also lost her royal protection officers when traveling alone, which may have contributed to the circumstances of her death in Paris in 1997. Despite the huge settlement, Diana's final years were marked by loneliness. She died with an estimated net worth of $25 million, which was left to her sons William and Harry. 6. William IV. Before William IV became king, he spent 20 years living with Irish actress Dorothea Jordan, completely unmarried and deeply in debt. This is a story of royal hypocrisy, broken promises, and a woman left to die in poverty. William, the third son of King George III, never expected to become king. He joined the Royal Navy at age 13 and earned the nickname Sailor King. He served honorably under Horatio Nelson, who praised him highly. But William also loved the sailor lifestyle, drinking, brawling, and spending money he didn't have. In 1789, William forced his father to make him Duke of Clarence by threatening to run for the House of Commons, which would have been a massive royal scandal. George III reluctantly agreed and granted him a parliamentary income, but William's spending always exceeded his allowance. From 1790 to 1811, William lived with actress Dorothea Jordan, and they had 10 illegitimate children together, all given the surname Fitzclarence. When they split in 1811, Mrs. Jordan had no doubt about the reason. Money, my good friend has, I am convinced, made him at this moment the most wretched of men, she wrote. William gave her a financial settlement of $4,400 per year and custody of their daughters, but only on the condition that she never returned to the stage, which he considered disgraceful. Here's where William showed his cruelty. When Dorothea's acting career began to fail and she took on roles to pay off debts incurred by her daughter's husband, William took away their daughters and stopped all financial support. Dorothea, now completely destitute, fled to France to escape creditors and died in poverty near Paris in 1816. William never helped her again. Meanwhile, William was deeply in debt and desperately tried to marry wealthy heiresses to solve his money problems. All his attempts failed. After the death of Princess Charlotte of Wales in 1817 left the royal family without legitimate heirs, William finally married Princess Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen in 1818. Adelaide took on William and all his debts. For their first year of marriage, the couple lived in economical fashion in Germany, Adelaide's homeland, because it was cheaper than England. Parliament had voted William an increased allowance, which he reluctantly accepted after his requests to have it increased further were refused. William's debts were progressively paid off thanks to Adelaide's careful management and the increased parliamentary allowance. When he unexpectedly became king in 1830 at age 64, his finances were finally stable, but only because his wife had rescued him from his own terrible spending habits. 7. Princess Margaret. Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth II's younger sister, lived a glamorous life filled with high society parties, designer clothes, and expensive tastes. While she never faced bankruptcy, her lavish spending and the cost of maintaining her lifestyle raised eyebrows and questions about royal finances. During her 1965 tour of the United States with her husband, Lord Snowdon, the British press expressed serious concerns about the extravagant cost of the trip. One headline bluntly asked, "Who pays?" The trip cost an estimated $30,000, equivalent to $350,000 today, of public money. While the tour was seen as a diplomatic success, critics questioned whether it was worth the expense. Princess Margaret received a parliamentary annuity as part of her official duties. According to historical records, by 2002, she was among 8 recipients of parliamentary annuities, receiving a combined total of $1.5 million annually. Between 1993 and 2012, Queen Elizabeth II voluntarily refunded the cost of these annuities to the Treasury. In 1978, during her affair with Roddy Llewellyn, a 31-year-old landscape gardener, reports emerged about Margaret's expensive lifestyle. The Washington Post reported that she received a yearly expense allowance of $103,000 in 1978 dollars. Details leaked about her personal grooming bill being nearly $250,000 annually, including $18,000 on physical fitness, $15,000 on hair, $12,000 on aromatherapy, and $33,000 on beauty treatments. These expenses were allegedly leaked by friends of Prince Charles who wanted to show that, despite her carefully cultivated image as someone who cared about the sick and dying, she was actually an expensive and high-maintenance member of the royal family. While Princess Margaret never faced actual financial hardship, she remained a member of the royal family with full support until her death in 2002. Her spending habits and expensive tastes highlighted the cost of maintaining certain royals on the public purse. The debate around her finances contributed to ongoing discussions about which royals should receive public funding. 8. Prince John. This entry is different because it's not about financial hardship in the traditional sense, but about a royal who faced a different kind of poverty, a poverty of love, attention, and dignity. Prince John, the youngest son of King George V and Queen Mary, was hidden away from public life because of his epilepsy and developmental disabilities. Born on July 12, 1905, Prince John was 5th in line to the throne. At age 4, he began suffering from epileptic seizures and showed signs of what today might be diagnosed as autism. As his condition deteriorated, he was sent to live at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, cared for by his governess, Lala Bill, and kept away from public view. While this isn't financial poverty, Prince John suffered from what we might call emotional and social poverty. His brother, the future King Edward VIII, wrote in a letter that John had been practically shut up for the last 2 years and that no one has even seen him except the family, and then only once or twice a year. Edward callously added that John's death in 1919 at age 13 was the greatest relief imaginable, or what we've always silently prayed for. The royal family's treatment of Prince John reflected the attitudes of the time toward people with disabilities and epilepsy. The British Epileptic Association later stated, at that time people with epilepsy were put apart from the rest of the community. They were often put in epilepsy colonies or mental institutions. It was thought to be a form of mental illness. While Prince John never lacked for material comforts, he lived on a royal estate with a dedicated staff. He was impoverished in the ways that truly matter: family connection, public acknowledgement, and the chance to live a full life. His story reminds us that poverty comes in many forms. 9. Queen Elizabeth II. Yes, even the late Queen Elizabeth II faced financial pressures during her reign. In 2013, a shocking report revealed that the royal household had overspent so severely that the Queen was down to her last £1 million in reserve funds. The British House of Commons Public Accounts Committee released a 35-page report showing that Queen Elizabeth II received $31 million, about $50 million from taxpayers for 2012 to 2013, but overspending had whittled down the Royal Reserve Fund to just $1 million at the end of that period. The report was scathing in its criticism. It is not clear to us that the Treasury is sufficiently challenging in its scrutiny of the household's financial affairs, or that the new funding arrangements sufficiently incentivize the household to find greater efficiency savings. How did this happen? The royals were spending more on utilities, $9.9 million in 2012-2013, compared with $8.2 million in 2007 to 2008. Royal travel costs, property maintenance, and entertaining expenses all contributed to the overspending. In October 2012, the Queen's treasurer, Sir Alan Reid, was lectured by the Public Accounts Committee about why the royals had exceeded their budget of $31 million, spending $33.3 million instead. The committee told the Queen, essentially, to cut costs and boost income. A significant financial priority for the royal household is to reduce the backlog in essential maintenance across the occupied royal palaces. Buckingham Palace responded in a statement, citing examples like renewing a lead roof over the Royal Library at Windsor and removing asbestos from the basement of Buckingham Palace. A Buckingham Palace spokesperson explained that the £1 million left in reserve was all planned and approved by the Treasury, but critics weren't convinced. The report noted that royal travel on the royal train cost $200,000 in 1 year alone. While Queen Elizabeth II was personally estimated to be worth around $500 million by Forbes in 2011, the official royal household budget was under serious strain. This situation showed that even monarchs must balance their books, and the Queen wasn't immune to financial scrutiny. 10. Prince Philip. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh and husband of Queen Elizabeth II, made headlines in 1969 when he complained about the royal family's finances in a surprisingly candid televised interview. During an interview that later appeared in the documentary series Royal Family, Philip was asked about a London news report detailing the high cost of sustaining the royal family on an allowance of $100,000 a year. The interviewer asked if this was creating an awkward situation. "Very," Prince Philip replied bluntly. "We go into the red next year." He was then asked if they'd had to shutter any of their estates. "No, not altogether. We've closed down." Well, for instance, the Queen had a small yacht that she had to sell. And I should probably have to give up polo fairly soon. At the time, Philip's remarks provoked ill will from the British public, who failed to share his view that selling a yacht and giving up polo counted as genuine financial hardship. The average British family struggling to pay basic bills found little sympathy for a royal complaining about such luxuries. Throughout his life, Prince Philip received a parliamentary annuity. According to the Civil List Act, he received £359,000 per year from the Treasury to support his official duties. The Sovereign Grant Act 2011 later abolished most parliamentary annuities except for Philip's, which continued until his death in April 2021. Philip's 1969 comments became infamous as an example of how out of touch the royal family could seem regarding money matters. While the royals may have faced budget constraints relative to their expenses, Philip's complaints about giving up polo hardly constituted real financial hardship by any normal standard. The incident highlighted a persistent tension. The royal family receives public funding to maintain their official duties and properties, but when they complain about money, it often backfires spectacularly with a public that faces real economic struggles. 11. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. In January 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle shocked the world by announcing their intention to step back from their roles as senior members of the royal family. A key part of their statement focused on their desire to work to become financially independent. At the time of their announcement, Harry and Meghan were receiving funding through the Duchy of Cornwall, managed by Prince Charles, now King Charles III. In September 2020, Newsweek confirmed that Prince Harry was no longer receiving funds from the duchy. This marked a significant financial shift for the couple. How did they manage financially? Prince Harry had approximately $10 million inherited from his mother, Princess Diana, which provided a safety net. But the couple didn't rely solely on inheritance. They quickly signed lucrative contracts that far exceeded royal allowances. The couple signed major deals with Netflix and Spotify worth tens of millions of dollars. They purchased a $14.65 million mansion in Montecito, California, and began building their own media empire through their Archwell Foundation and production company. However, their transition to financial independence wasn't without controversy. That same month, in September 2020, they announced they had paid back the $2.4 million in public money from the sovereign grant that was used to renovate their Windsor home, Frogmore Cottage. This repayment was seen as essential to their claim of financial independence. The couple's financial journey represents a modern royal dilemma. How do you maintain a lifestyle befitting former senior royals while earning your own money? Critics have accused them of cashing in on their royal titles and connections, while supporters argue they're simply supporting themselves rather than relying on taxpayer funds. Their story shows that even in the 21st century, navigating royal finances, whether inside or outside the firm, remains complicated and controversial. 12. King Charles III. In 2024, King Charles III faced public backlash when it was announced that the monarchy would receive a massive pay raise while British citizens struggled with a severe cost of living crisis. The sovereign grant was set to rise from over $86 million in 2024-25 to around $132 million in 2025-2026, a 53% jump in official annual income. This increase was due to a surge in profits from the Crown Estate, a vast collection of land and property across the UK. The timing couldn't have been worse. Britain was grappling with spiraling costs of living, with families struggling to afford food, energy, and housing. The announcement that the monarchy would receive an extra $45 million while food banks were seeing record numbers sparked fury on social media. Kevin Maguire, associate editor of the left-leaning tabloid The Mirror, said on X that there was no cost of living squeeze for indulged King Charles. Author Shola Mos-Shogbamamu posted, "The monarchy is a ripoff. King Charles getting $45 million richer off the backs of British people in the midst of food banks, spiraling cost of living crisis, broken NHS, deepening child poverty, etc. is morally bankrupt and disgusting." Some of the increased funds were earmarked for the final stages of a 10-year, $475 million resurfacing of Buckingham Palace. Around $600,000 from the sovereign grant for 23-24 was spent on King Charles's coronation. Defenders of the monarchy pointed out that while the king receives the sovereign grant from the treasury, this comes from Crown Estate profits that the royal family surrenders to the government. The Crown Estate generated $211 million for the treasury in 2007-08. Without the monarchy, the argument goes, the government wouldn't receive these profits. Critics counter that the Crown Estate is not the personal property of the monarch, and that comparing royal finances to those of struggling citizens during a cost of living crisis shows how out of touch the Caballero institution has become. What shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our fascinating royal content.